usually I'm a very quiet person. I don't say a lot of words, so this is a big deal for me. Anyways, so Lauren, the guitarist, the singer for the band, the Dogs, had brought Mark and me down to the Masque to check out the subterranean rat nursery of a rehearsal space, which also had a stage to showcase the earliest iterations of LA punk bands who rehearsed in the various chambers of this musty tomb. We met guitarist Craig Lee, who would later play guitar for the Bags, one of the premier LA punk bands of the day, featuring Patricia Morrison, later of Sisters of Mercy, drummer Terry Graham, who would go on to play for the Gun Club, and longtime friend, author, and educator Alice Bagg. Ironically, we had kicked the tires on starting a band with Craig earlier in 1977. The Masque was an abandoned basement that also doubled as a nuclear bomb shelter. It was. Appearing as though what was then the Soviet Union had indeed carried out its threats against the West. Dark and dingy, it smelled of urine and mold. There was a constant dripping of water from pipes overhead, with rumblings and wailings of a dangerous new music coming from dark caverns in random directions. The halls had confused your senses like a fun house at a county fair. In some places, it was 10 degrees cooler than the air above, yet in others more tepid and humid, with an oppressive air. It brought back memories of seeing the old sketchy Pike in Long Beach, the carnival fixture of the rough shoreline our mom used to take us to as kids. The Pike was a far cry from the mostly regulated and frequently inspected amusement parks of today. Like others of its time, the Pike was a haven for the outcast. It was a capture of shadows, shadows with recesses and dark areas, shadows with temperatures colder than the environs around them. If you didn't stay in your group, you might find yourself alone in its cold gravity, hearing unorganized, forced, and malign laughter from fun houses past. My mother, Bonnie, was a regular at the Pike. She was a teenager when she had Mark and me. The Pike was filled with all the great early tattoo artists when the art was a dirty word. Names like Leroy Manu, Bob Shaw, Lyle Tuttle, Bert Grimm were etched above the shadowy facades of the shops with samples of the skin art they offered. You could catch a glimpse of plainclothes detectives with black leather attaché cases tucked under their arms, surely holding several 8x10 glossies of malefactors wanted for various crimes throughout the region, hoping that the subjects whose mugs adorned the glossies within had a taste for the art. Now, down in that punk basement, through the dark, faces popped in and out, filtered through murky light from dim, dirty light bulbs dangling from water pipes or broken plaster on the ceiling above, some flickering randomly. Stench flies buzzed about near an apocalyptic bathroom, hissing out an eerie whine from leaking pipes. The toilet stalls were tenuously dangled from the walls like nearly dead chained prisoners shackled to a medieval dungeon. The basement mirrored the inside of my head. Faces of misfits from the world around were intermittently caught in the dim lights. You could see these types of people on Hollywood Boulevard once or twice a day, but down there in that basement, there were quite a collection of them. Weirdos, dorks, thrift store clothing, dangerous-looking ones with safety pin piercings, spiky hairdos, like talons reaching for the gods of imperfection. This was the new church in shadows. Their choir snarling, snotty, loud, and unapologetic. I knew these people, and they knew me, though we had never met. I was brought to what was referred to as the office and introduced to an old Scottish man named Brendan Mullen. He didn't look nothing like the other kids running amok in the cellar. He wore a tweed sports coat with patches on his elbows and beige corduroy baggy pants. Light reddish short hair, combed with a part on the side. He did speak with a cool accent, but I could only understand about every 4 words. I just kept affirming with false comprehension and timely nods. I'm an expert in cursory attention. Most of Brandon's associates didn't understand him either, so my placating inadvertently kept him talking for what seemed like hours at a time. Brendan took a liking to me for some reason. I was so young, and in some sense, I felt naive. He explained how the punks had discovered his rehearsal studio and how he wanted to start doing concerts down there. He wanted parties showcasing the avant-garde bands, the new breed now aligning with punk. He ascertained that I was recently homeless and told me to grab some foam padding and find a dark recess in the abyss to crash for a few days. I grabbed what little belongings I had and started to get acquainted with a few other denizens. The next day, I decided to change my name to something more punk. I brainstormed with my new punk friends, Spaz Attack, a young angsty punk who had migrated to LA from the East Coast looking very Sid Vicious, and Geza X, a mad genius who played around with the guitar effects pedals and reel-to-reel tape players, trying to concoct new bizarre sounds for recordings and productions. Geza would go on to produce many of the nascent punk bands that sprang from the well of the Masque: the Weirdos, the Germs, the Red Cross, Dead Kennedys, the Avengers. Both Geza and Spaz were unofficially staying down there as well. Spaz, Geza X, and I agreed that my new punk name, Bruce Barf, would suffice. Little did my new damaged connections know I was anorexic and bulimic, giving credibility to my new name. I set out for a new look. Having no money or intel on places and shops to find it for style, I decided to shave random chunks out of the side of my head, made a new set of earrings out of a tampon, fashioned with a fishing hook. I wore them through my left ear. Through my right ear, I took notebook binder and put it through a beer can and wrapped myself in duct tape instead of a shirt like some hardware store dummy. The first show I emceed was for the true pioneers of LA punk, the Detroit garage punk duo, The Dogs, who brought their pre-punk Stooges-esque sound to LA. Also playing that night were Rick Wilder and his trash punk band Berlin Brats, and The Controllers, an early punk trio comprising of Johnny Stingray, Kid Spike, and Gay Austin on drums. They too were from the Detroit and surrounding areas. There wasn't a huge turnout, maybe 40 people, but that's what we wanted at the Masque. Stylized punk was in its very early stages, and even more so on the West Coast. We were only a handful, but we were certain there would be others, very soon, many others. We would discover the budding progenitor we would discover this budding progenitor was in a fierce race against the time in the city of Los Angeles, which in this area was sort of a police state. The building and safety code inspectors and the LAPD would send agents to that building in the alley off Cherokee Street. They'd shake us upstarts down for the building's many code violations, ultimately looking for a kickback to delay closing us down, or we hope leave us alone altogether. The local stores and shops on Hollywood Boulevard didn't like the hooligans and freaks on their sidewalks and alleys. We were bad for business. They were scourging us with mild threats and court battles and lawsuits. Brendan used his boyish charms and wit, giving them a good song and dance. He would often exaggerate his already heavy Scottish accent and mumble incoherently, enough that they felt he was saying all the right things but weren't sure. And being embarrassed to admit they didn't understand the accent, usually just left with a warning, getting out before they were exposed for the dumb Americans they stood to exemplify. We lived like subterranean pirates. Our ship was underground. Our booty was the thrashing and wailing of cheap amplifications through blown speakers. We were the camaraderie of the damned, the stench of the urine, the disapproval of society, and easy access to a mattress for deviant sexual activity.